Chimbo to denying me as only molam chimbo ngabja the pakartangam santo hirmado bomba to jechan la kivshansa. First of all, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining this online talk today. There are lots of people there, so very nice to see all of you. And thank you very much again. Without your support, I would not be able to do these spiritual activities. And I cannot really express how grateful I am to have all of you here with me all the time when I teach, and your support, my Dharma activities. So I want to say thank you very, very much for everything. Now, before we start the teaching, first I would like to share with all of you some information about my new book that I wrote based on my practice experiences and my understanding about Dharma teachings. As all of you know, I entered the Buddhist path at an early age and continued to receive teachings, and I have spent my whole life study basically the teachings. And the more I examine Buddhism, this spiritual path, the more I appreciate how profound and vast it is. So I have some good experience, good understanding of the Buddhist teachings, and I have some experience with practicing Buddhism. Therefore, I would like to introduce the inner meaning of Buddhism, as I said, based on the great instructions that I received from my great teachers and also according to my own experience. Therefore, in this book, I explain the essence of teachings passed down from generation of the great masters that I have taken to heart and practiced. So I would like to introduce and let you know kind of the summary of this book and my motive. So there were at least three main reasons why I was motivated to write this book. The first the reason is I want to help people who are not even spiritual, but who really want to eliminate their mental sufferings, their negative emotions, and how to bring happiness into their day-to-day life. So like that's my first motivation or a reason that I um, wrote this book. And then second reason, I also want to help people who want to practice Buddhism, but they are uh, very new to Buddhism. So they really don't know how to start practicing Buddhism. So therefore, in this book, I introduced what Buddhism is, how to investigate it, and how to start and how to follow it. So that's the second reason. And then the third, in this book, I introduced how to take all the stages for specific Buddhist practitioners who want to practice Tibetan Buddhism. So those are the sort of main reason that I wrote this book. And as you know, the title of this book, it's called The Heart of Tibetan Buddhism, Advice for Life, Death, and Enlightenment. And as many of you know, it was just published by Shambhala. So I'm very happy to have the opportunity to share it with you. So again, this book has, let me show you, has part 1 and part 2. The part 1 is about very basic teachings and very basic instructions which anyone can apply and practice. It's called Entering the Path of Practice. And it has 12 chapters, such as an introduction to the inner meaning of teachings of Buddhism, introduction to meditation, how to develop human nature, the Buddha nature, and human qualities. Of course, introduction for Four Noble Truths, introduction, interdependence, and of course, how to develop bodhicitta mind, and also about teacher and student relationship. What else? About shamatha and vipassana meditation, so on and so forth. That is the part 1, the entering the path of practice. And then the part 2, it's called preparing for, you see, preparing for, the part 2 is, as I said, is about specific Buddhist teachings. So it's called preparing for birth, death, and after death. Oh, and the bardo, which is after death. And it has 3 chapters, such as how to birth and death occur, what will happen after death, explanation about past and future life, and instruction for time of death, and so on and so forth. So, as you know, there are many people who have really misunderstand about Buddhism. So I think writing a Buddhist teachings in ordinary language is the best way to help people understand the teachings and practicing the teachings properly. When you enter the Buddhist path, it is very important to understand the preciousness of the Dharma teachings. That's the first kind of step. And through that, through understanding Dharma teachings, uh, very important to develop the faith. Faith is, I will tell you later, but the foundation, not just Buddhism, but all the religion, like all kinds of religion. So the faith, without faith, you cannot practice. But through the study, Buddhist teachings, then develop faith, and to have an aspiration to practice them. Because if you practice the teachings well, then, as you know, it protects you from suffering and brings happiness into your life. So again, in this book, I explained the oral instructions from great masters and also from my own experience to guide students on their spiritual path. That's why it's called the Heart of Tibetan Buddhism, Advice for Life, Death, and Enlightenment. I think that include everything, life, death, enlightenment. So that is the summary of this kind of like whole book. But that's not enough. If you please, you have time, read the book and study this book. I hope you enjoy, but also this is very, as I said, your language, it's very easy to understand, not like Buddhist philosophy, I have lots of experience, Western culture, and the people, how they think, how they believe, based on that. And then I wrote this book. So I think it's very easy to understand, and I think there are lots of good instructions from the great masters. So I think if you really want to take this path and practice Buddhism, I think it's very important. First, you have to understand the teachings of Buddha through your study. So I think, yeah, that's the summary of this book. And I hope you all have this book. And today I'm going to read the part of some, the information in this book. So I will let you know. But yeah, and again, thank you very much for your support. And I'm very happy to share all of this with you. Yep, that's all. Now, as usual, before we start the teaching, we have to check our motivation because it's almost impossible as worldly people not to have thoughts that are inspired by selfish motivation. And a selfish mind really bad, wants to harm others for the sake of our own happiness. That's really negative. So we have to change, we have to transform a selfish motivation to a positive and beneficial motivation. And as I always say, each moment of our life is a great gift. And we have the great opportunity to do something beneficial. And if we deeply recognize that all sentient beings are just like us in wanting happiness, not wanting suffering, that's easy to understand. That is um, um, important to think deeply and recognize that we all basically are wanting happiness. So then if we will feel a sort of common connection, the bond with everyone, and that brings us a real sense of genuine love and good connection, compassion, so that we will be able to stop harming others mentally, physically. So that's very important. So we have to transform our negative thoughts into beneficial motivation before we start teaching, before we meditate, or whatever. Never forget that. Now, as I said, the main topic for today's teaching is about the book. And as you know, the title of this book is The Heart of Tibetan Buddhism. So here I'm going to talk a little bit about Tibetan Buddhism. As you know, Tibetan Buddhism is based on the fundamental teachings of Buddha, such as the Four Noble Truths. And I always advise, new people who want to practice Buddhism and take refuge. The first I recommend you should at least understand about the Four Noble Truths. That's the kind of like fundamental teachings of Buddha, so that you will really make sure that you're comfortable to take this path and practice Buddhism. So the Four Noble Truths, these teachings relate directly to our own experience of our lives, nothing else. These teachings are nothing but talking about our lives from Shakyamuni Buddha's experience of 6 years of practice into attain realization. As you know, what Buddha did after he attained enlightenment, he gave teachings on the Four Noble Truths. It is the first teaching of the Buddha, and it is the fundamental journey of the Buddhist path. So, of course, Tibetan Buddhism is based on these teachings. And Buddhism was first introduced in Tibet in the around 7th century. Um, and then slowly in the 8th century, the Tibetan king, Trasong Debsen, invited two Buddhist masters from India to teach in Tibet. And the Buddhist masters who brought the teachings to Tibet were, of course, Shantarakshita and Padmasambhava. Shantarakshita was a Mahayana Buddhist master at Nalanda University in India. And then Padmasambhava was a tantric master who founded the Nyingma school, Nyingma lineage, the oldest. Nyingma in Tibetan means Nyingma means in Tibet the oldest, the oldest of the four major schools of Tibetan Buddhism that exist today. And of course, the Nyingma tradition followed the Vajrayana secret teachings from the great master Padmasambhava. That's why Padmasambhava is what we call second Buddha, especially in Nyingma tradition. He is the main teacher. He is the founder of, it's so important, master. That's the Nyingma tradition, the school. And then after that, then we have Karjit, the Sarcha, and Gelug tradition. Of course, all followed the Four Noble Truths teachings and Vajrayana teachings coming into Tibet from India. That's that, right? Tibetan Buddhism, and then there is also the what do you call it, Kardamba school, founded by Drom Tomba, a disciple of the Indian master Atisha, right? Very important. The Kardamba tradition is like that. I always like my teachings really based on the Kardamba tradition. It's just mind training teachings, bodhicitta, all that is came from Drom Tomba, who the best disciple of the Indian master George Parda Adisha. Atisha came to Tibet, and you know all that, right? So that's Kardamba. And then we have now, so for in Tibetan Buddhism, we have Nyingma, Karjit, Sarcha, Gelug, Kardamba. And after that, many great Tibetan masters, passed down different Buddhist transmissions, lineages over the following centuries. Lots of teachings, commentaries on basically the Four Noble Truths. So the key principles of Buddhism is really recognizing the interconnectedness of all sentient beings through the practice of compassion. Therefore, Tibetan Buddhism is a way of living. That's usually teachers say. And it is living compassionately and trying to help each other. It is purifying negative thoughts and practicing a kind mind, and living without too much desire and being happy. That is the kind of summary of advice for the true meaning of life, Tibetan Buddhism. So basically, all the advice, methods, instructions in this book, the point is sharing a common goal of helping people to become a good human being and lead a better life. That is the point. So, as I always say, there are different people, different animals in this world, but basically we are beings, living beings. It means everyone wants to achieve happiness, whether you are a Buddhist or not. We all need freedom from suffering. That's the reason why the Buddha taught the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. When we start to think about suffering, of course, we will feel very uncomfortable, but Buddhists say, that uncomfortable feeling is the first step of our practice. So we have to understand two things here. The first is recognition. We have to recognize that we are suffering. All beings are suffering. Buddha said that our suffering need to be recognized. And he said it's recognizing our suffering as the first step to its solution. So first is recognition. Then the second is encouragement. After recognizing our suffering, then we take the time to look deeply into it in order to understand its causes. Now, when we are talking about the suffering, there are three kinds of sufferings. But I think all of you understand the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change. These two, very easy to understand. It's happen like every single day in our life. So I think it's easy to generate compassion when you see someone go through this kind of suffering, and suffering of change. And my understanding of these first two sufferings is that are pretty natural. we're going to, meaning, experience, we're going to experience these two sufferings every single day. But the third one, right, the all-pervasive suffering, is, I think, more difficult to understand and the hardest to identify than the other two types of suffering. So this type of suffering generally has nothing to do with the circumstances, but it has to do with the concepts and beliefs behind the circumstances. So we all are dealing with all pervasive suffering all the time. So it's not really very recognizable, but it's the most important to recognize this one. So to work with all pervasive suffering, in Tibetan we call chapa. Chapa and the dung. Chapa means pervasive, dung suffering. So this suffering, what we do is we spend time looking at how am I seeing things? What is the belief behind the feeling or the thought or the emotions I'm experiencing? So if you want to understand the root of the all-pervasive suffering is through your examination. And when you see yourself suffering from these ideas, beliefs, you will realize that this is the root of your suffering. Whatever we perceive with the dualistic mind is incorrect way of perceiving, right? So this third suffering, the all-pervasive suffering, is the most important to recognize, because spiritual practitioners who desire to look for complete liberation from samsara must develop recognition of this kind of suffering. So these three sufferings Buddhism recognizes come from two causes. They come from karma and negative emotions. So we have cause and effect, right? Jumdi in Tibetan, cause is je, effect is jiva, so cause and effect. And we have karma and effect. Limdi, li means karma, and di means effect. These are different. Cause and effect and karma and effect, okay? So from Buddhist point of view, everything arises from cause and effect. That's very natural, very natural. But karma and its result arise from mental afflictions, which are mostly of two types, right? Conceptual afflictions, such as mistaken views. And the other is emotional afflictions, such as desire, attachment, anger, etc. So this is what we call emotional affliction. So all these afflictions arise from the dualistic mind. So therefore, the understanding of emptiness combined with the cultivation of bodhicitta is the very essence of the practice in order to eliminate all these sufferings. So, Buddha taught us how to recognize these sufferings, and he taught us how to eliminate of these sufferings. I'm trying to kind of explain the Four Noble Truths, which is the first Noble Truth. When we are understanding our own suffering and understanding others' suffering is the foundation of our practice, okay? Without that understanding, we cannot practice compassion, practice bodhicitta, practice emptiness, none of that. In order to liberate ourselves from the suffering of suffering of samsara, it is important to recognize about how these experiences of sufferings arise from their causes and conditions. That's the reason why the Buddha taught the second noble truth, right? The cause of suffering. The first noble truth, Buddha said, we have to recognize that we are suffering. The second noble truth is we have to recognize the cause of suffering, that we are suffering, but what is the cause that we are suffering? Once we understand the cause of suffering, then we may think about whether we can reduce its cause or eliminate its cause. The temporary negative emotions can be separate from the mind, right? So therefore, the Buddha taught the third noble truth, the truth of cessation. Which is being free from negative emotions, and a permanent separation from all sentient beings, the suffering caused by these afflictions. So in order to liberate our mind from these afflictions, there are three paths that you can choose to practice: the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana path. So these paths are the method to attain liberation. That is the reason why the Buddha taught the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path. So you see, recognizing that we are suffering, if there is nothing we can do, then what is the point? Recognize suffering, but that's not the case. So we have to also recognize the cause. For example, if I'm angry, why, right? I'm suffering from my anger. But what is the cause that makes me angry? But that anger is not permanent, so we can remove that anger from the Buddha nature. But in order to reduce my anger or eliminate it, I have to take part, either Hinayana, Mahayana, or Vajrayana. So therefore, we need these Four Noble Truths. These Four Noble Truths are, as I said, the foundation of all the Buddhist path. And these are the, common ground for all the Buddhist teachings. Then after that, great masters from India, from Tibet, so they have all these different methods and instructions and teachings like that, but everything based on this Four Noble Truths, the teachings of Buddha. The Four Noble Truths are taught mostly for the benefit of beginners who desire to leave samsara and achieve enlightenment, liberation. So, these Four Noble Truths, the teachings are extremely helpful because, as I said, it relates directly to our own experience, our life, especially to our natural desire to seek happiness and overcome suffering. So the point is that Buddha recognized it. Through these practices, a very negative person can be transformed into a great person. So usually our dualistic mind is extremely selfish and has the wrong view, but we can change it through these teachings, study these teachings and practice these teachings. That is the purpose of Dharma practice. So again, if you don't know, when people take refuge vows, we take refuge vow in the refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, right? Why? What is Dharma? Most people can't explain what is the essence of Dharma, what is the benefit of Dharma. That's why I introduced in this book what is the inner meaning of Tibetan Buddhism. That's so important to understand if you want to practice Buddhism. Because without Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, there's no way you can develop faith. Without faith, you don't have foundation. It's so important. And Buddhism is there are three things, right? So Buddhism, like there's what do you call it? Buddhist philosophy. not so important for us Buddhist practitioners. Then Buddhist like this religion, it's all these rituals and all these things that we do at monasteries, not important for us. We want to understand the mind training teachings, inner meaning of Buddhist teaching. And the Buddha also deeply understood that everything arises in independence upon cause and conditions. Like our experience of happiness and suffering do not arise without cause and condition. That is the reason why the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. You see, I can teach you the Four Noble Truths and day after day after day. It's just so profound. And which provide an understanding of the relationship between cause and their cause and their effect. So again, the first two noble truths are about the characteristic and the causes of samsara. And then the third and fourth truths are about the characteristics and causes of enlightenment. So the teachings on interdependence and these Four Noble Truths are the very unique and special teachings from the Buddha. You can see like everything, the special, the unique teachings from the Buddha is interdependence, the origination, right? But when you see, like when you study these Four Noble Truths, you can see the cause and effect, the cause and conditions, everything depends. There's, nothing without cause and conditions. And so he's basically talking about the interdependence. These are the unique and very special, I think, teachings from Buddha. I wrote some information. Some other people, religious people, say like, "Oh, Buddhism is very negative." So they write, after Buddha, whatever they called enlightenment, even though they don't believe in enlightenment. But then Buddha taught the sufferings. So it's so negative. But these people have no idea what the Four Noble Truths about these teachings. And the result of practicing this but the Buddha from the Buddha, the Four Noble Truth is liberation. That is another unique and special accomplishment that the Buddha discovered. So you remember the Buddha explains, I have seen deeply that nothing can be by itself alone, that everything depends on each other. And he also say, I have seen that all beings are capable, possessing the nature of awakening. He said this right after achieve enlightenment. So in order to start the spiritual path, we need teachings like these, Four Noble Truths. Through this practice, as I said, suffering can be transformed into happiness. I mean, we can experience that. It teaches us that we should do our practice based on understanding of the true nature of samsara and nirvana. Without good understanding of the Four Noble Truths, it is impossible to practice Buddhist teachings. That's why I always say people, if you are a Buddhist, you have to at least understand about Four Noble Truths. Maybe not in very detail, but general, the meaning of the Four Noble Truths. Otherwise, it is impossible to practice Buddha's teachings. And understanding of the nature of reality, so important. If you understand the Four Noble Truths, then you will understand Buddha himself. If the teachings of the Buddha are beneficial for you, if the teachings of Buddha are make sense and meaningful and beneficial for you, that tells you the Buddha is a great teacher. And when Buddha said, like, you have to investigate my teachings and myself, and then after that, people say, how do we investigate his teachings themselves? And Nagarjuna said that through his teachings, you have to investigate the Buddha's teachings, and then, such as Four Noble Truths. And if you understand that, then you understand Buddha himself. It tells you that who Buddha is, Buddha is a great teacher, if you understand his teaching. So the Four Noble Truths, very important teaching. The Buddha said, I have seen that all human beings are endowed with the nature of awakening and capable of freeing themselves from suffering of samsara. So, as you know, the Buddha taught these teachings right after his enlightenment, and to to liberate us from suffering, and to establish us in the ultimate truth of nature of reality. So now there is only one nature, and that is the Buddha nature. Basic goodness. So Buddha said, we have capacity to become a fully awakened Buddha. And Buddha said that everyone possesses this nature, and that each of us may find it within ourselves. one of the sutra, the Buddha, the Samadhi Raja Sutra, Tangin Jarpo, says the essence of the Sugatas pervades all beings, generate the most vast and sublime of intentions. For each and every being has the cause of awakening. There's not a single sentient being who lacks this potential. So this is from the Buddha, and Buddha wanted us to know this truth, because knowing this, we can discover our Buddha nature. So therefore, this is related to also the Four Noble Truths. First, you have to recognize the suffering, and then because the suffering, through the cause, right? Causes, we are suffering because of negative emotions. Negative emotions can separate because our basic nature is the Buddha nature. So Buddha went to Bodh Gaya and he discovered through his deep meditation that what we call dualistic mind actually does not ultimately exist at all. So if we want to understand the ultimate level, then we have to change this view. Because once we change this dualistic view, then Buddha nature seems to be there already within us. And it is going beyond dualistic perceptions. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Buddha nature. The Uttara Tantra, there is an explanation about Buddha nature. An easy way to explain it, Buddha nature is like a gemstone. A gemstone is found within the ground, but the stone itself is pure. So that means similarly, our Buddha nature is covered by all these disturbing emotions, afflictions, but the nature itself intrinsically pure. That's one. And then second is the Tratanta says the Buddha nature is like space. The sky is covered by clouds, but space itself remains pure, which is untouched by clouds. Similarly, our negative emotions obscure our Buddha nature, but nature itself untouched by delusions. But at the same time, we have a lot of obstacles that prevent our Buddha nature from being fully awakened. And obstacle, there Buddha also said there are two main obstacles to recognition. The first obstacle is that many people don't wish to enter the path of enlightenment. The second obstacle is that many people who enter the path don't complete it, give up, don't practice enough, don't have time to practice. We entered, I am a Buddhist, I took refuge vows. We entered this path, but don't complete it. So then there is no enlightenment. So those two are main obstacles in the sutra Buddha explained. To reach enlightenment, we have to overcome these two obstacles, and we must use our mind training to look inward to realize the true nature of our minds. And in order to have such a realization, we must have a good foundation, not just whatever we want. Enlightenment is nothing other than when we realize the true nature of our own mind. But unfortunately, most beings never recognize their nature. And most people, they don't even know that they have it. This is from my book. For many, their Buddha nature is like a beautiful lotus growing in a north-facing cave that never receives the sunlight of the pointed out instructions. And this lotus dies without anyone enjoying its beauty. This is similar to us. We naturally possess Buddha nature, but we don't recognize it. We live our entire lives without recognizing Buddha nature, and we suffer with ignorance until we die. So our purpose in spiritual practice is not looking for something totally new, but to discover what we already are. When you received the pointing out instruction of the nature of your mind, you will discover nothing other than what you already possess. You will know that your Buddha nature is not your dualistic mind, thoughts. When you will know that your Buddha nature is not your dualistic mind, and when we talk about Buddha nature, it seems like Buddha nature exists somewhere else. But we are actually talking about our own innate nature. So when you see you have natural compassion even before you practice Buddhism, or even before you take refuge, you have this natural faith, compassion, love, you know, it's a sign that you have a Buddha nature. The word Buddha is Sanji in Tibetan. Sang means purified or awakened, meaning that all negative afflictions have been completely purified. That is the meaning of Tibetan word sang. Sang means like you purified everything. And then Ji means fully developed. Ji means developed, meaning that the enlightened one has fully developed all the wisdom, all these, enlightened qualities. That's what we call Buddha. And the seed of that Buddha or the enlightened essence is Buddha nature. And we all possess that Buddha nature, the seed of enlightenment. So Buddha's teachings the teachings contains three major points, right? Discipline, meditation, and wisdom. And as you know, the wisdom is the main goal, and meditation is an important process to achieve wisdom. And discipline is the method that helps us to achieve deep meditation so that wisdom will arise. Otherwise, our ignorance blocks the wisdom and obscures the true nature of our mind. So we have to develop wisdom, but in order to develop wisdom, we need discipline and meditation. Then we can, so that the wisdom will develop, arise. And then always act based on that wisdom. And then whatever arises in our mind becomes a good method. And when our minds get a little bit closer to Dharma practice through discipline, meditation, then we will start to find that we have less interest in negative thoughts, negative emotions. And when we see that, it brings a new encouragement to continue, and it gives us inner strength, enthusiasm. Then we will notice at least some improvement in ourselves. And then we keep practicing with diligence, and then enlightenment is possible. That's how we start. Slowly, based on wisdom, understanding Buddhist teachings, the fundamental teachings of the Buddha. Because as ordinary people, um, usually they're not interested practicing, the teachings without understanding the benefit of the teachings. If you are not sort of interested, achieve enlightenment and practice, the meditation every day. That shows that your mind is not close to the Dharma practice and understanding Dharma teachings. So then you need another method. Okay, so inner meaning of Tibetan Buddhism. Basically, the interdependence, the Four Noble Truths. Um, Now, since we're talking about the Buddha nature, Four Noble Truths, okay, meditate for a few minutes here. Very simple meditation, okay? What do we do when we meditate? Sit straight and just watch your thought and be aware of your thoughts without any opinions and without any ideas, beliefs. This takes you to also the understanding of the all-pervasive suffering. So just to relax without any opinions. If you do that, your thoughts will disappear, right? Watch your thoughts, be aware of your thoughts, but without any opinions and continuity, and then your thoughts will disappear. Then just to focus on whatever is there. And sometimes if you recognize that you are following your thoughts, then just be aware of that and again, let it go. If you have thoughts, maybe you don't have any thoughts. Your mind is, that means like your mind is a calm and relaxing. Then just to be aware of that and relax there. Don't look something for special, just aware of everything around you, inside yourself, and let them go. By doing that over and over again, it helps you without losing self-awareness, and it can help you to discover your Buddha nature and inner peace. This is a very simple meditation, but I think I found it very profound. And if you're lucky, then you can discover your true nature of mind. But that's usually impossible without a good foundation, good understanding the Four Noble Truths, and no faith, and it's impossible. But at least it helps you without losing this self-awareness. Self-awareness, there are two kinds of self-awareness. This one, like when we do this, when our thoughts disappear, and then you still like, you have this annoying, like, consciousness or whatever you call it, still you're aware, you observe everything. That's self-awareness. That's not Buddha nature, but that's also, it helps you to discover this inner peace. Because if you have a full of thoughts in your head, then you don't have this inner peace. But this self-awareness helps you to discover that inner peace and relaxation. That is very like the first step, very important. This is everybody can, apply and practice. Okay, so 5 minutes here, please. Practice. Let me see. Meditate 5 minutes on this simple meditation. Okay, just be aware of everything and then let it go, and just to focus on self-awareness for 5 minutes.